On October the 7th of 2023, the world witnessed one of the most audacious and sophisticated attacks ever launched by a non-state actor. A barrage of rockets, drones, and naval commandos from the Gaza Strip, controlled by the militant group Hamas, struck Israel with an unprecedented intensity and coordination. The attack was not one only of military challenge, but also political and psychological, aimed at undermining Israel's very legitimacy, its security, and its peace. But how did Hamas manage to pull off such a complex operation? What were its objectives and motivations? And how did Israel respond to this threat? In this video, we'll explore the anatomy of this latest terrorist attack, the factors that led to it, and the implications for the future and the region and the world. Hamas was founded in 1987 during the first Palestinian Intifada, also called uprising, against the Israeli occupation. It was a spin-off, at least in part, of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, an Islamist religious, social, and political movement. It initially gained popularity among Palestinians, and at least overtly at the time, promised to establish a network of charities that addressed poverty, as well as healthcare and educational needs. However, its true motivations would later become more manifest as it gains notoriety for a campaign of suicide bombings and other attacks against Israel. Hamas, as an organization, is dedicated to Israeli destruction and has always rejected any compromise or negotiation with Israel. It also opposes Israel's fundamental right to exist and any pursuit of a two-state solution based on any pre-1967 borders. Hamas, for its part, considers itself to be the true representative of Palestinian resistance and Islam in the region. Hamas initially came to power in 2006 when it won Palestinian legislative elections, defeating the then PLO-dominant faction, the Fatah. This victory by Hamas shocked the world at the time and triggered a political crisis that would see the Palestinian Authority split into two rival governments, one led by the Fatah that would remain dominant in the West Bank, and one led by Hamas in Gaza, where the strike came from. This split turned violent in 2007 when Hamas outed its rival faction, the Fatah, from Gaza after a very brief civil war. Since then, Gaza has been under blockade by both Israel and Egypt, which accuse Hamas of smuggling weapons and supporting terrorism. The blockade has crippled Gaza's economy and infrastructure, creating a humanitarian crisis for its residents. Not that Gaza seems to mind, as its people continue to use supplies provided to it for terroristic aims. Gaza has also been the scene of several conflicts between Israel and Hamas in 2008 to 2009, 2012, 2014, and this most recent conflict in 2023. This latest attack by Hamas is the most violent by Hamas and the most serious in the conflict between the two powers. The attack from Hamas took place about 6 a.m. local time, when Hamas began the attack by launching hundreds of rockets from Gaza into southern and central Israel. These rockets are crudely made and made from plumbing supplies that were initially given for humanitarian efforts, but converted into a military and terroristic purpose. The rockets launched from civilian centers and targeted both civilian and military assets in Israel, including assets in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Most of the rockets were downed and intercepted by Israel's famous Iron Dome missile defense system, but many others managed to evade or otherwise overwhelm the system. The rocket barrage began and lasted for over an hour, creating panic and chaos among the Israeli population. But the rockets, it seemed, were only part of the aerial attack from Hamas. While Israel was busy dealing with this rocket attack, Hamas deployed another and somewhat unexpected weapon: drones. These were not ordinary drones, but rather sophisticated drones that could fly at low altitude, evade radar detection, and carry explosive payloads. Hamas apparently acquired these drones from Iran, its main patron and ally in the region. These drones targeted strategic sites in Israel, both civilian and military, such as power plants, oil refineries, military bases, and even airports. Most of the drones were shot down by Israeli air defense, but others managed to get through, causing significant damage and disruption. In addition to the aerial attack, Hamas had another trick up its sleeve: attack from the sea. Hamas used fighters who had apparently been trained for months at secret locations in Gaza, Egypt, and apparently beyond. Hamas apparently used anything that was available, from normal speedboats and jet skis to even scooters that help to travel underwater. They use these assets to infiltrate Israel's coastline from different directions. Their mission, apparently, to carry out suicide operations, assassinations, kidnappings, and suicide bombings in Israel towns and villages near the sea. Some of the commandos were detected and killed by Israelis' naval forces, but others did manage to reach their destinations, creating terror and confusion among the civilian population of Israel. This attack by Hamas's terroristic forces was the most violent, complex, and well-organized in the history of the Israeli-Hamas conflict. It was designed, apparently, to achieve multiple different goals: inflict damage and casualties on Israel, demonstrate Hamas' capability and resolve, challenge Israeli deterrence and reputation, potentially provoke an Israeli overreaction that might alienate the international community, rally support from other Arab and Muslim countries, and undermine rival authority still operating in the West Bank. Fortunately, the Hamas attack has backfired in many critical ways. It has triggered a swift and fierce response from Israel, which has launched airstrikes and artillery fire on Gaza, as well as the deployment of some ground forces to help repel further invasion. Israel has targeted Hamas's leaders, operatives, infrastructure, weapon caches, tunnels, and launch sites, taking out many of them to great success. Israel has also mobilized its reserves, which has appeared in numbers beyond what Israel initially called for, declared a state of emergency, further activated its civil defense system, and imposed a lockdown on the area. Israel, for its part as a sovereign state, has vowed to defend itself against any and all threats and restore deterrence and security to the nation. The attack by Hamas has sparked violence in other parts of the region, threatening to make this conflict a regional one. Hezbollah, for its part, has gotten into the mix, threatening to get involved by direct military action, potentially bringing both Lebanon and Iran into the conflict. This has raised the specter of a wider regional war involving Iran and all of its proxies on one side of the conflict, and Israel and all of its allies into the other. The attack has also revealed long-existing biases in the media and raised questions about the role and responsibility of media in how they've covered the conflict. For example, the New York Times has been accused of showing bias against Israel in its coverage of the attack, using language, sources, and images that downplay Hamas's aggression and exaggerate Israeli culpability. This attack has had a profound impact on the lives of millions of people on both sides of the border and beyond. According to Israeli authorities, about 1,300 people have died in the attack, which, if adjusted for U.S. population, would be the equivalent of over 40,000 Americans having died in a terrorist attack. Additionally, 3,200 people have been injured in the attack since the attack began on Israel. The United Nations, for its part, has warned of the humanitarian crisis now emerging, where a population is facing an increasingly dire situation perpetrated by Hamas. The attack has also had a lasting effect and apparently dashed any hopes for peace and stability in the region, at least in the short to medium term. The attack has certainly shattered any hope of political solution or dialogue between Israel and Hamas, as Israel now sees Hamas as an existential threat that must be eliminated, and also harmed any sort of relationship that might otherwise exist between Israel and any other Palestinian authority. The attack has also shown the increased importance and relevance of the U.S. role, both as it relates to Israel and as a potential peacemaker. The United States, for its part, has deployed military assets, including a naval carrier, into the region to help deter further aggression against Israel. U.S. President Joe Biden visited Israel this week to address the situation and offer support to Israel. He openly condemned the atrocities on Hamas and reaffirmed commitment to Israeli security. President Joe Biden has also announced he plans to request up to $100 billion in supplemental funding from Congress to help provide additional security and resources to Israel in this time of crisis. The United States has also been working to help resolve the crisis and prevent it from escalating into a further regional conflict that could see the United States engulfed in another war in the Mideast. The reprehensible terrorist attack by Hamas has been a defining incident for Israel, as well as the region and the world beyond. It has tested the capabilities, strengths, goals, and values of Israel and the Western world. It has also revealed strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The current situation poses an existential crisis on Israel and forms a game changer for the region and beyond that will have lasting consequences for years to come.